Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivrajakaacharya Shtotra Sat. His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Radha Vinod Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Ki Jai. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishnakhanvitamscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpatarobhyasya Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Pancha Tattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Aradhyo Bhagavan Vrajeshatanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupasana Vrajavadhu Vargenaya Kalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam Prema Pumartho Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhor Matamidam Tatradara Naparaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Chaitanya Prabhu Hare Krishna ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರೆ Hare Krishna to all of you. I am pleasantly surprised to see so many devotees here at this time on a weekday. It's a working day for most people. Yeah. Otherwise, it would have been full for somebody else. Hare Krishna. So yesterday, till yesterday evening, we had been speaking a lot about Chaitanya Leela, especially in connection to Rath Yatra festival in Jagannath Puri. So yesterday I thought we should have a change of flavor. So instead of continuing with Jagannath Leela, I began a somewhat philosophical topic on Nyaya Sutras. And we had the first session yesterday. And how many of you were or did not hear yesterday's session? Please raise your hand so I know how much to repeat. Okay. So essentially, Nyaya Sutras are logical aphorisms. An aphorism is a very short, concise statement, like a proverb. So a sutra is a Sanskrit equivalent of that, which is a very concise statement of a very general principle or a truth, a very deep philosophical point, or even a point of worldly wisdom, or any general principle or truth can be sometimes very succinctly expressed. So that is called a sutra. So there are varieties of sutras, as I mentioned yesterday. All branches of knowledge have such concise statements in between and especially in the beginning of the explanation of that subject. In law, for those of you who have some idea of law, in every chapter there is a definition of terms. And then those terms are explained. Sometimes scholars take books to write on basic things. There are proverbs, which are very succinct statements of many things. I was giving the example of grapes are sour. So when we say grapes are sour, we all understand what it means. We don't need to tell the whole story. There was a fox, he was hungry, he went here, there. So because everybody knows the story, so it is clear when we say grapes are sour. So like that, in science also, E equals mc squared. Short statement, but encompasses so much. Now coming to Sanskrit literature, especially philosophy, we have the famous Vedanta Sutra. So the Veda Anta, so the conclusions of the Vedas is called Vedanta. And Vyasadeva has expressed these conclusions in sutra form, in bullet point. In today's language, IT people, you will understand bullet point form. So these are about 200, about 250 or so such sutras. It's like Janmadhyasya Yataha, Anandamayobhyasat, and so on. So similarly, just as there are Vedanta sutras, there are sutras in many fields of Sanskrit study and philosophy. And one of them is Nyaya Sutra. Nyaya means logic. So sometimes these short sutras of logic, they explain points of not only worldly wisdom, but also sometimes they can be explained or used to explain deep philosophical points as well. So for those of you who were present here yesterday, can you mention some of the sutras we discussed? First one. Sorry, I had last couple of days. Kopa Manduka Nyaya. So what does that mean? The logic of the frog in the well. So, and philosophically, how do you explain it? Those who are in their own circles cannot see anything beyond that, okay. But philosophically, how would you employ that analogy? Yes, for example, the scientists, they consider as true only that which is perceivable by the senses, the eyes, ears, nose, skin, etc. So anything else that is beyond that, they say we don't accept it. So therefore, because many of the Shastric statements or teachings are beyond the jurisdiction of the senses, so people who claim to follow science don't accept the Shastric versions. So because they are living in that limited sphere of their sensory experience. So they think that whatever I experience with the senses, that's the all in all. And there's nothing beyond that. So that's like the frog in the well, to imagine that there's nothing beyond my well. So what is the well here? The well is the world of my sensory experience. But reality need not always be fitted into our sensory experience. There can be a lot that can be beyond the reach of our senses. So modern science does not accommodate that. So they can't accept that there can be something beyond our senses. And even if they hypothetically accept it, they say, well, that's not our business to study. So they just confine to a certain area. Like the frog in the well does not understand, or he cannot accommodate in his mind that there is something called an ocean. He has no experience of the ocean. All he has experience of is that tiny well. So that way, philosophically, people are unable to come to terms with the fact that there is a whole spiritual reality that is beyond our senses. Okay, so that was the Kupa Manduka Nyaya. Second one. Raju Sarpa Nyaya. Raju means a rope. Sarpa means a snake. So what is the purport of this? How is this employed? Anyone in brief? Raju Sarpa Nyaya. Yes.
Misconceiving one thing for the another. For example, in this case, misconceiving another to this thing.
Yes, so misconceiving one thing to be another. That's called illusion. Illusion means to think one thing to be another. For example, a person may be traveling somewhere at night and he may see a rope on the street. And due to insufficient light, he jumps to the wrong conclusion that this is a snake. Actually, it's not a snake, it's a rope. But because of ignorance, he thinks it to be a snake. So how do you employ this to understand philosophical points?
Coming to the conclusion very early and without seeing it all near about circumstances.
Okay, that's fine. But specifically with respect to our philosophical discussion yesterday. Okay, you were saying something? Yeah.
Rope is real, snake is also real. You misunderstand one of the So similarly, this metal world is real. Krishna is also real. But seeing that metal world separate from Krishna, so that is illusion. But the missing connection.
And this is in connection with which branch of philosophers? Why does this come up? Mayavadis. So the Mayavadis, they imagine that there is a spiritual reality beyond this material world, and that is Satya. Brahma Satya, Jagat Mithya. So they imagine or they say that this material world is false. It's an illusion. It doesn't exist. That is their statement. And they say that beyond this illusory material world, which we imagine exists, but which actually doesn't, there is a spiritual reality, but that spiritual reality is impersonal. Shri Shri Radha Radha Vinod ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. So the Vaishnava understanding is that the material world is not false. It exists. What is false or illusory is to see some disconnection between the material world and its creator, Krishna. When we try to see the material world as separate from the Supreme Lord, that is illusion. Or to see, for example, the material body as ourselves, and that is illusion. It doesn't mean that the body doesn't exist. The body exists, even though it's temporary. But when I imagine the body to be myself, that is illusion. Similarly, the material world exists, but to think that this is separate from Krishna is an illusion. So this was in brief an explanation of the Rajju Sarpa Nyaya, the logic of the rope and the snake. What was the third Nyaya Sutra? Andha Pangu Nyaya. What does this mean? The logic of the blind man and the lame man. So how would you apply it to some philosophical understanding? Yes, can say in the mic.
Cooperation, which I don't have, others have, so cooperate together.
Yes. So by cooperation, the lame man and the blind man can do a lot. When the lame man is alone, he's handicapped. He can't run very fast. A blind man is also handicapped because of his lack of vision and he can't move anywhere without help. But when the two come together, then the lame man can use his physical energy and the blind man can use his sight, and the blind man can give the, he can move, he can have the physical energy. So the lame man takes advantage of the physical, he doesn't have the vision. So he can see, but the blind man is not able to see. But he has strong body, so he can move. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada explained that the Western civilization, it doesn't have spiritual vision. They may have technological and economic development. But if the cultural and spiritual wealth or vision of India can be used, and simultaneously the economic and technical development of the West can be synergized with that, then the whole world can benefit. So similarly, we also saw different people have different propensities, abilities, capacities. And if they're all employed together for the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna, then it can be for the benefit of everyone. Any other sutra that we saw yesterday? Yeah. Kakataliya Nyaya. What is that? Yeah, please say in the mic.
Unnecessary argument.
Unnecessary argumentation. What is this kak and what is a tala? Yeah, so tala is a palm tree, tala vriksha. So when a crow falls, he lands on a branch of a tal tree. One time, what happened was that fruit fell down. So there was arguments between the people observing that event. Somebody said, because the crow landed on the branch, the fruit fell down. Somebody said, no. Anyway, the fruit was ripe, it was going to fall, and it was just a coincidence that the crow landed at that exact same moment. So people began to argue, but it's pointless to argue. So Srila Prabhupada says that similarly, there are many issues in the spiritual field which are inconceivable, which cannot be resolved simply by argumentation. By sincere practice of devotional service, many things eventually will be revealed. But if you simply argue pointlessly, uselessly, then we end up being the losers. Of course, in the material world also, we see people needlessly arguing. You see that in television debates, you see that in your office, at home, on the streets, unnecessary argumentation, which is just a waste of time and energy. We've all heard that shloka, Tarko Pratishtha Shrutayo Vipinda, Nasa Vrishi Yasya Matam Nabindam. Then, Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam Mahajano Yena Katahasya Patha. So the point is, Tarkaha Apratishtaha. So you can't establish anything with certainty only on the basis of argument. That doesn't mean that logic need not be used, but logic must be in accordance with the principles of the Shastra. Then that logic has value. If your logic is in a vacuum without any foundation in Shastra, it is meaningless. One can go on meaninglessly arguing like this, but it will be of no avail. Tarkaha apratishta, shrutoyo vibhinna. And there are many such literatures and books and opinions expressed by various people. Nasav rishiryas matam bhinnam. And various intellectuals and scholars will have a variety of opinions on a given topic. And they will all try to establish their uniqueness by propounding some new philosophy or some new theory. And generally, a person is not considered worth his salt, an intellectual, unless he has some new, unique theory. So in this way, everybody is busy trying to leave their stamp behind in the intellectual world. So they are creating their own, concocting their own theories that have no regard to the Shastric knowledge. So such things are pointless. But the real deep truths of Dharma, Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam, they reside in the hearts of those great personalities who have realized the truth by experience, not simply by logic and argument. Mahajano yena gatah sapantha. Therefore, one must follow in the footsteps of such great saintly personalities to understand the subtleties of the absolute truth and not resort simply to dry logic and argumentation. Okay, so today we'll start with another interesting by the way, because it's a working day, for those of you who have to leave at any point to go to your office, or if any of you are students and you have to go to your college or anywhere, school, you may please leave at any time. Generally, I would not say that, but in the evening, once you come, you have to stay put. And if you regret your decision of having come, too bad, you just have to stay. But today, because it is the morning time of working day, so we are giving this relaxation, the rules. So the next one, is it up there? Can you all see this? Shakha Chandra Nyaya. The logic of the tree branch and the moon. Sometimes, as I mentioned yesterday, behind every such proverb or sutra, there is a story, a small story, big story. Just like for the grapes are sour, there's a story. Grass is greener on the other side, there's a story behind it. So for every such sutra, there's some kind of a small story behind it. So similarly, Shakha Chandra Nyaya. Once there was a mother who had a small child, an infant in her arms. And infants generally don't know where to look. They just look randomly here and there. They not know how to look up, look in the different directions. And the mother wants to quieten the child who's crying and wants to show the child the moon. But the child has no idea which direction to look in to see the moon. So she points to the branches of a tree. And between the branches, you can see the moon. The moon is so situated in the sky at that moment that from that standpoint, you can see the moon through the branches. So mother points out the branches. See that branch? You can see this tree. So the child is able to follow the movement of the finger and seeing the branch which is nearby. And then she can easily point to the moon. So the branches are a nearby object. The moon is a distant object. So the mother is using the help of a nearby object to point out a distant object. So in this way, we can use This is also some kind of pictorial depiction of the Shakha Chandra. So we can use this to get some understanding of things which are otherwise very difficult to understand. You see, the use of analogies is very helpful. There are various pramanas in Vedic knowledge. Pramana means evidence. Now, today, unfortunately, people don't speak with a deep understanding. So they use words without understanding what the words really mean. For example, if you tell somebody God exists, that person may say, what is the proof that God exists? But the word proof is a very deep word. They don't realize how deep that word is. In the Sanskrit text, there is a great analysis of this one word. It's called pramana. There are varieties of pramana. Actually, even in the legal field, for those of you who may have some experience, I hope not, dealing with the law, there is a whole act called the Indian Evidence Act. I think now it has got changed with the recent some parliament bill or something like that. So it goes to establish what is proof and what is not proof. Say somebody has committed a crime. How do you prove that this person has committed the crime? So there's a whole book on that. There's a whole thesis of different rules and regulations and conditions under which you can establish that actually that act is proved or not proved. So people just use terms so lightly. So similarly, when they say, what is the proof? Somebody who's aware of Vedic truths can give you a whole lecture on that. Just as one word, proof. It's called praman. So there is Dashavitha praman. There are 10 types of praman. But of these, generally we consider 3 as prominent, and which include all others. And those of you who have done this basic 7-day course in Bhagavad Gita, you all are aware of it. Which are the 3 pramanas? First is? No, first is not Anumana. Pratyaksha pramana. That evidence which comes as a result of sensory perception, because I see something with my eyes, I hear something with my ears, I can taste something with my tongue, I can touch something with my skin. So that is some kind of evidence. It is evidence, it is valid evidence. We don't reject Pratyaksha Pramana. Sometimes devotees misunderstand Pratyaksha Pramana and they think that we only accept Shastra Pramana and we don't accept Pratyaksha Pramana. We accept Pratyaksha Pramana to the extent that it doesn't contradict the Shastra Pramana, which is Shabda Pramana. Anuman is inference. We draw conclusions logically from what we observe and perceive through our senses. But included in all of this, in the Dashavitha Pramana, is a Pramana called Upamana Pramana. Upamana, or in Hindi they call it Upama, which means analogy. So we often use analogies to explain things to make it more easily understandable. So analogies are used even in everyday language. Yes? You can say one time, one devotee was giving a class and then somebody else told him, "You are speaking like the Rajdhani Express." So what he went to say that don't speak so fast. Speak a little slow, because when you speak too fast, then people can't understand what you're saying. That's an analogy to just explain something simple. But we also need analogies sometime to explain philosophical principles, especially those spiritual truths that are beyond the range of our senses. Essentially, spirit is beyond matter. Spirit cannot be understood or perceived by matter unless there is some mercy. And even then, that involves imparting that spiritual character to the observer. So unless we get divine vision, which is spiritual, which is imparted by mercy of some spiritual source, like a great devotee or the Supreme Lord himself, we will not be able to understand and perceive spiritual phenomena and personalities and events and so on. So therefore, when spiritual truths need to be understood and you want to explain them, how do you do that? How do you explain something which is beyond our experience? So you explain something that is beyond our experience by utilizing something that is within our experience, something that is understandable to us, that we can relate to. You use those events, those phenomena, those objects as tools to illustrate or understand something that is beyond our experience. Just like the mother is using some nearby object like the branch, to explain or show something that is very distant, the moon, to the child. So we are like children trying to understand and grapple with spiritual truths. So we don't understand these things, not easy to understand. So sometimes some examples or analogies have to be given. Now, the difficult thing about understanding spiritual matters is that they are fundamentally inconceivable. Inconceivable means that which cannot be conceived, that which cannot be accommodated in our tiny brains. We cannot understand spiritual truths merely by our intelligence or our mind. So therefore, the first principle of understanding spiritual truth is that it is essentially inconceivable. It is beyond the reach of our mind, intelligence, and senses. If we don't accept this one point, we will never be able to understand spiritual knowledge. So Srila Jiva Goswami has explained that unless one accepts the principle of the achintya shakti of the Lord, the inconceivable potency of the Lord, one cannot understand Krishna. So this is a basic fact that any new entrant into spiritual knowledge must come to terms with. So when you accept the point that Krishna's Shaktis are inconceivable and everything in the spiritual realm is actually inconceivable, and it is not by dry argumentation and logic that we can understand it, but we can understand it by revelation. When it is revealed by a higher source, just like the mother is the higher source for the child. She is revealing some information that is otherwise not accessible to the child. Children generally don't look up, babies, if you notice, they will look sideways. But very rarely they will look up like this. They don't know, they don't have that concept. So it takes time for them. So mother has to point and show something. So it's difficult. So we also don't have that grasp of anything beyond our senses. So we are given these analogies to somehow or the other to get some grip or some understanding, even if it is a hint of a grip of the subject, through such analogies. For example, how can we accept that Krishna is a cowherd boy Now, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the origin of all the universes, origin of all the spiritual worlds, everything, he comes as a cowherd boy. He's a cowherd boy grazing the cows. Now, generally, a big person in this world doesn't want to do any profession that may seem to be below his dignity. So you talk to the CEO of a company and you tell him that now you should take up the profession of herding cows or cleaning the goshala, clean the cow dung. He'll say that's below my dignity. How can I am such a big CEO or a director? How can I be doing something as mundane and in his idea, low class as this? So it is inconceivable that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is from the philosophical point of view so powerful, inconceivably great and powerful, that he is doing something as apparently mundane or simple or down to earth as grazing cows. And he is frolicking with the other boys, just like other boys play. And they make fun of each other and they jump and dance and so on. So Krishna is doing the same thing. Similarly, for another point that can be explained, Srila Prabhupada says that when Krishna and his different incarnations appear within the world, they appear to be just like one of us, or they may appear to be related to the material world, but they are never so. They are always transcendental. The very word avatar comes from the word avatarana, which means to descend. So avatarati iti avataraha. So one who descends from the higher plane, the spiritual world, into the material world, whilst retaining the spiritual nature completely, that is avatar. So therefore, these spiritual forms of the Lord, they always retain their godhood and the 100% spiritual position and nature. But when they descend into this world, we take them for granted. We think they're also like us. So when Krishna, Ram, they come into the world, because they're mingling in the human society, we tend to think they're also like one of us. So what is the word that the shloka that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita? Avajananti mam mudha manushim tadanatvitam param bhava majananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. So those who are ignorant, do not understand my supreme dominion over all that be, they also imagine me to be an ordinary human being, which is not the case. Krishna is always the supreme personality of God in all circumstances. So similarly, accepting these avatars as belonging to this world is also not the fact. Another aspect is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has descended, also people thought him to be an ordinary human being. He's avatari, not just an avatar, he's the source of all the avatars because he's directly Krishna himself, not an expansion of Krishna. He's directly Krishna. Let's see some analogies from Shastra. Can you mention some of them? Here we have Padmapatra Ivambhasa, that life or one should be like a lotus leaf in the muddy atmosphere. One of the words for a lotus is pankaja. Panka and ja, one which is born in the panka or the mud. So the lotus leaf, even though it exists in the mud, in a muddy pond, or maybe in a clear pond, it remains pure. It doesn't get contaminated. But if you put a drop of water on that lotus leaf, it can fall off anytime. It totters. So life in this material world is like that. So there are analogies, numerous analogies given to explain how life is in the world, etc. Similarly, the example of the soul in the body. To help us understand it, we have the bird in the cage. Kurmungani va sarvashaha. Who can explain this? Yes. What is the verse? Yada samharate chayam Purvanganiva sarvashaha indriyani indriyatebyah tasya prajna pratishtita. So what does it mean?
So when the tortoise, Purva Anganiva solution,
Withdraws
withdraws everything. It withdraws the
limbs.
limbs whenever danger approaches. Similarly, wise man, whenever there is proclivity for sense gratification, he withdraws his senses.
That's right. So this is an example of a tortoise. So we know the example of a tortoise. So we can relate to concepts when we have analogies that are known to us. Some current coming here or something? Sharp? Maybe because it's got hot or what? Okay, fine. Similarly, Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakham. Who knows this analogy? From which chapter? And what is this analogy? Whose phone is ringing? No phones ringing. That's the fifth regulative principle of Krishna consciousness. Yes.
A reflection of the spiritual world.
The material world is a reflection of the spiritual world.
Reverse the situation.
Yes. And what is it reflected on?
Of the
When a tree is on the bank of a river, then the reflection is found on the water, the surface of the water.
roots are from.
Yes. So when the material spiritual world, if you say the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world, what is the surface of reflection? Desire. That's correct. You're all studying a Bhakti Shastra, Bhakti Vaibhav. So this example is given to help us understand the correlation between the material world and the spiritual world. Similarly, the idea of the correlation between the soul, the gross body, the mind, the intelligence, the senses. This is a verse from the Upanishads. Atmanagvam rathinam vidhi shariram rathamevatu. So it is a very elaborate analogy of the whole body-soul arrangement. Very, very important and useful analogy for us to know. Okay, now Chandra Shakha Nyaya will be easily understood by us also with this example. Venum Kwanantam Arvinda Talayapaksham Barhavatam Samasitambud Sundaramam. We sing it every day at the time of the Shringar Darshan. So what does it mean? Who can explain this word for word? This is from the Brahma Samhita. Anyone would like to explain word for word? Mike, please.
Krishna is playing his flute, and Aravind Dalaya Action is ice, Aravind Dala looks and
But only like lotus petals? What kind of lotus petals? Arvinda Aksha. Dala. Arvinda Dala Aksha. But there's another word. What is the other word? Ayata. Blooming. So his eyes are not just like lotus petals, they're like blooming lotus petals. Arvinda Dala Ayata Aksha. Okay?
Bharavatam is very peacock feather.
Barha is the peacock feather. Avitamsam is the ornament, the head.
Asita Ambuda Sundara Asita Ambuda means rain cloud.
Why is Asita Ambuda called a rain cloud?
It's
How do you explain with the words? Asita means what? Asita means dark. Okay. What is Ambuda?
Buddha, that gives rain.
That which gives rain. It's a cloud. Ambuda is a word for a cloud. And why is Ambuda the word for a cloud? Ambu, water. The, that which gives. So Ambuda is a cloud. See, Sanskrit is a very poetic language. You can make your own words, unlimited number of words by combining different things. So Ambu, that which gives water. So the cloud is that which showers rain. So Ambuda, Asita, is not just a summer. Shweta, Ambuda. Ambuda, a summer cloud which is white will not give water. Only a cloud that becomes dark because water is there in it, that gives. So Asita implies dark. So go on.
Sundara Angams, all names are beautiful with the color of rain.
Right. So what is the analogy being done here? There are different types of analogies used here. One is for Krishna's eyes,
Lotus,
like blooming lotuses. Now, you may look at blooming lotuses and you get some idea. But can you actually understand Krishna's eyes? Only when you have reached that level of spiritual realization, that pure devotion that Krishna gives his darshan, then we will understand the beauty of those eyes. But because we have no capacity at this time to understand such a deep thing, we are not so fortunate at this point yet. So the Shastras and the great Acharyas give us some simple analogies that we can relate to. Right? So it's like blooming lotus, because a lotus is a symbol of beauty and purity. So we all understand that. And a blooming lotus is a symbol of beauty, looks very nice. So Krishna's eyes, so the idea is to indicate how beautiful and attractive Krishna's eyes are. So you give the analogy of a lotus, a blooming lotus. Similarly, Asita Ambuda Sundara Angam, Asitambuda Sundara Angam. So Krishna's complexion is compared to that of a dark monsoon cloud. And actually, not just a dark monsoon cloud, Jayadev Goswami has said, Abhinava Jaladhara Sundara He. You heard that? Abhinava Jaladhara Sundara He. So Jaladhara is another word for a cloud. But what kind of a cloud? Abhinava. So what is Abhinav? Newly formed, fresh monsoon cloud. So Krishna's complexion is compared to not just a cloud, but a rain-bearing cloud. Not just a rain-bearing cloud, but a freshly formed rain-bearing cloud. So when you look at that freshly formed rain-bearing cloud, you get some idea of its texture, of its color. So you think of that as Krishna's complexion. It's a poor analogy. It's the best we can find in the world. In terms of worldly analogies, it's the best, but it's still not adequate. Krishna's complexion is not exactly like that, because Krishna's complexion is spiritual. And this freshly formed rain-bearing cloud is material. So material things cannot fully explain spiritual phenomena. So it is just a kind of a hint. It's the Shakha Chandra Nyaya. Through the example or the analogy of the rain-bearing cloud, we get some hint of what Krishna's beautiful complexion is like. Right? In this country, in our country, we have a fascination with fair skin. Fair and lovely and straight and everyone wants to be fair and lovely. Because somehow or the other, we have this conception that fair means lovely. Correct? But Krishna is dark. Ram is also dark. And that darkness is of such an astonishing beauty that there is no parallel. Radharani is golden in complexion. Krishna is dark complexion, Shama, Shama Varna, Shama Sundara. He's Shama and he's Sundar. Shama Sundara. So therefore, analogies are useful, very useful, because they explain or they help us to understand things that are beyond our comprehension, like Krishna's beauty, but they are still inadequate. Okay, so we can't stretch an analogy beyond a certain point, and then the analogy doesn't work. The analogy is meant for a limited purpose to illustrate a limited point. So we must stick the analogy to that. So that is how we must understand Shakha Chandra Nyaya. Any questions on Shakha Chandra Nyaya? What time do we end? 9 o'clock, right? The time? Kandula Vrishchika Nyaya, I think it'll take a lot of time. There are many more. So what we'll do is we'll have some discussion now, in case you have any questions. There are many more Nyaya Sutras like this. At some other time, we can discuss it. Yes, we can have some questions now for a few minutes, and then some of you have to leave for work. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So first of all, thank you for the class, Maharaj. We were discussing Shaka Chandra. Can we say that the entire scriptures that is there available for us is in one way Shaka Chandra because whatever words are used is inadequate with our arguments. So is that the right understanding?
Yes. Even though the Vedas are considered non-different from the Supreme Lord, until we have the realization of it in our heart, which, as I said, has to be revealed from a higher source, till such time there will be words. They will be useful words because of their non-difference with the Supreme. But they will not give us a complete understanding. They will give us some degree of understanding, which is essential. And then we proceed on that path, sincerely following those instructions. And then gradually at some point, when Krishna deems us qualified, then we will get the actual experience of that. So yes, you're right.
And Maharaj, so even if it's a revealed knowledge, so when that individual begins to describe, it becomes Shaka Chandra because there are no words to describe what this person has been revealed.
Correct? Absolutely. You cannot understand another's experience unless you would go through it yourself. When someone is in some pain, for some reason, has lost a loved one or whatever it is, we may commiserate with that person, we may sympathize, we may offer our condolences, we may feel pain, but we cannot feel the same kind of pain that that person feels. So that is something different. Experience cannot be substituted. We have to experience. Even this verse is Brahma's experience. This was revealed, this form of Krishna was revealed to Brahma as a mature fruit of his penances. So then Brahma was astonished to see this beautiful form, and then he composed the Brahma Samhita. So what we are reading now is the realization of Brahma as he saw Krishna. And it matches with the descriptions given in the other scriptures like the Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. So we understand, we recognize Brahma as the Mahajan, and is giving us an authentic, authorized description of the Supreme Lord. Okay?
Thank you.
Very simply, it's fine. I did my work is good. It's a simple way seeing or connecting with your spiritual group, and then looking the Supreme Lord is also the same example. Is where I cannot see the God, but definitely you can be associated with your spiritual group is in on the higher consciousness and achieving the getting the glimpse of God.
In the sense of being the representative.
Yeah.
Krishna or the spiritual realm has many representatives. These representatives, their function is to reveal partly, fully, to the extent possible to us the truths of the spiritual world. So naturally, it depends on the realization of the person speaking and the realization of the person listening. Both are important. Yes.
Maharaj, next. Maharaj, firstly, just how many sutras do you totally have this whole presentation? And the next question is, we discussed Achintya Kalavin Bhavanathan Sthambhena Achintya Tarko. From my preaching perspective, I just want to know what kind of suggestions you give, because even within Prabhupada groups, the presentation of Prabhupada's philosophy, there is debate between two people, they come together, whether it's a husband and wife, or two devotees, or all levels, about preaching, or about anything.
Husband wife is not a debate, it's an argument.
But can get violent. I'm just telling you all kinds of levels, whether it's devotees or husband, wife, management, all levels. Some feel this is the right way, some feel this is not the right way. So there's tarka in those things. To the extent some people lose inspiration or they get, they lose the mood to serve, they leave. So what kind of suggestion do you give in such kinds of debates, arguments?
Well, see, as I mentioned briefly yesterday evening, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had these debates with the sannyasis of Kashi, who were Mayavadis. He also discussed with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, but he was a reluctant debater. It is only when they spoke at length and they spoke truths which Mahaprabhu disagreed with strongly, then he spoke. Initially, he was very quiet in both cases. But then when the time came, then he spoke and he spoke and spoke and spoke. We also have parallels with Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya. We have parallels in various such things. So sometimes such discussions are necessary to establish the proper siddhanta so that people are not misled. To prevent people from getting misled into wrong philosophies, it is essential to put things firmly in proper perspective. So therefore, you see, Prabhupada also had these debates and discussions with scientists, with philosophers, with so many other people. What Shakachandra Nyaya, or what we talk about the Kakatalya Nyaya refers to is useless argumentation that has no point, that is futile. So where you want to establish an important theological point or a philosophical point, you may have to have a discussion or a debate with someone who holds an opposing viewpoint. And that has been the tradition going on from millennia. So we can do that. However, we also have to keep in mind that many points, like Rup and Sanatan, didn't bother to discuss with the Digvijay Pandit, as I was mentioning yesterday. They just signed the Vijay Patra. But Jiva Goswami thought, no, I have to protect the reputation of my uncles. How dare this arrogant scholar come and claim that he has defeated Rup and Sanatan Goswami? So he engaged him in debate and defeated him. So it depends on the context. So when you are presenting the truth of the Sampradaya, the theological teaching to the welfare of all, then yes, it's essential. So it is wisdom that determines when you should carry on the discussion and debate and when you shouldn't. It's also a matter of wisdom when you judge that this is getting into useless argumentation. So we have to judge, and at some point you feel that it's a waste of time. Stop. Many people come up to us also in the airport and the railway stations. They start arguing with us. Why this, why that, and who has seen God, they say so many things. So you have to judge whether it's worth spending your time on that person or not, right? So that is, you have to judge that according to when you should discuss and debate and when you should not. Number one. Number two, of course, many times, even within a given sampradaya, there will be divergent opinions on subtle and perhaps important philosophical points. And sometimes between two Vaishnava sampradayas also, there may be. So we accept this idea that there may be differences, we live and let live. But within the sampradaya also, there may be different conceptions, there may be differing opinions. When the acharyas may apparently speak different things, but we harmonize them and we reconcile them. Because in the absolute, all contradictions, apparent contradictions are reconciled. So we don't see apparent contradictions as contradictions. We see them as different ways of approaching the absolute truth. Because the absolute truth need not fit into our neat logical arguments and explanations. They can be multifaceted ways of understanding things, and all may be right also. Some may be wrong, some may be right, or all may be right. So there should not be arrogance, at least. Very principally, that's the first point. And then if very accomplished scholars get together and discuss and they're still not able to reach a conclusion, then so be it. Then that apparently must be Krishna's plan, that some things have to be left unresolved for now, to teach us humility, to understand that you don't think you can crack it all, that you can just crack all the mysteries of the universe, of the Shastras, just because we are scholarly. Some things will be left unresolved, which will be revealed at the right time. So some things can be resolved. It is our duty to try to resolve. We should put in our best effort. But ultimately, if it is not, we have to accept that and carry on with the basic things. Okay, so we should not let that disturb our faith in the basic process. So there is no need to go away from the process to leave. That is a misunderstanding. That is a sign of immaturity. So one should stick on in the process, and at a certain level, there may be some differences. Sometimes I've experienced very new devotees, very, very new devotees, who hear about some controversial philosophical point being discussed by senior devotees where there is a difference of opinion, and they start weighing in on that and taking very strong and heavy positions, and they criticize one senior devotee. But that is terrible. You should never do that. So I told them, you just come in, you first try to understand body, soul, this, that, everything. Now you're just going to a stratospheric level and you're talking about these very abstract philosophical points. First, get your basics right. Then go step by step, and don't judge senior people, right? But sometimes when we don't understand something at some level, we just let it be. We should follow the basic process. That will eventually lead us to complete realization. I took how many sutras? Well, there are quite a few actually. I haven't even completed it, even in this PPT. And there are, I have just extracted those sutras which have been used by Srila Prabhupada in his books and lectures. Here there may be another 5 or 6, maybe 10, I don't know exactly. And there are many other such Nyaya sutras. Literally dozens, if not hundreds. of Nyaya Sutras which you can employ usefully in our philosophy. Okay? Yes. Okay, those of you who wish to leave, please feel free to rise and go. If you have any important thing, we are over with the time.
Thank you, Maharaj, for what you asked. So as Roger was mentioning, when we study Shastras, we hear so much from our especially guys. It is wonderful here. It's like again, Chandra kind of situation. So, like as Physics Maharaj said, it's like I mean, what we are kind of seems to be an outside. It's the truths are there, but it doesn't get deeper into our regulation. Doesn't become part of practice. So what is it that prevents us from realizing the truths and making it integral as part of
Imperfect practice of the process, defective practice. We are falling short somewhere. We are making some mistake somewhere. There is some shortcoming somewhere in us and in our practice. So therefore, we are not getting that full realization. But
can you talk about the reading aspect?
The reading?
So that
well, follow the teachings. Follow the teachings very diligently as far as possible. And hear the philosophy regularly, chant the holy name nicely, follow all the instructions that Srila Prabhupada has given, and everything will be revealed. Especially, it is important for us to cultivate humility. Otherwise, nothing will be revealed to us. Humility is the touchstone. Devotional humility. Genuine devotional humility is a touchstone which will reveal everything in course of time, and patience. It will not happen overnight. It is a lifetime, in fact, many lifetimes of hard work and struggle. Aitu? Yes, one last question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So because why discussing this, you mentioned that Sanskrit is it used words like asita alu. You can combination two words, you can make many other words. I have heard about a kind like about Keshava. Keshava, that word itself had multiple meanings. Now, if you could, some other examples you can elaborate on this. This combination of words.
I think it's Krishna's hint, we should stop here. There are multiple words. I think all the words, for example, Krishna is lotus eyes. Yes, we use the analogy lotus for his eyes. So pick up all the Sanskrit equivalent for eyes, all the synonyms for eyes. Can you name some synonyms for eye in Sanskrit? Nayana, Netra, Aksha, Chakshu, Lochana. Okay, these are just 5. There are many more. Now give some words for Sanskrit, for lotus. Padma, Kamala, Pankaj, Aravinda, Kanja. So put down all these names, synonyms of lotus, and all these synonyms of eye, and have various combinations. And you'll get so many names of Krishna. Kamala Nayana, Kamala Netra, Kamalaksha, Kamala Lochana. Arvinda Nayana, Arvindaksha, Arvinda Lochana. right? So you can make your own names of Krishna, provided they don't violate the laws of grammar and the philosophical principles. Okay? All right. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON ICC Center ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Om. Hare Krishna. Huh?
Is it okay if you can sign and give me?
Yeah, sure.
We are starting the Purima distribution. I seek your blessing so that we can distribute many sets of Srimad Bhagavatam.
The request Maharaj, please come again, and again. Here, there is so let's express gratitude by chanting Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
So best wishes to all of you. And like I said yesterday, congratulations to all of you, because this magnificent temple has evolved and developed thanks to the sincere devotion of all of you and the wonderful team led by Narahari Chaitanya Prabhu. So gratitude and thanks and appreciation to each and every one of you. Hare Krishna.
We intend to do about 300 in this from this temple.
Acha.
Please pray for us.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
It was not offered.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Can we hear this Nyaya Sutras in the book also? Or your
Maybe I should write a book. Let us see. Let us see. Let us see.
Hare Krishna, now we'll show the deities, then we'll let the class. Hare Krishna, now ending the class. Thank you so much.